Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given.
Warning. This podcast contains sensitive information that may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Sheri Lopez on the show. Sheri's a human trafficking survivor, founder of the survivor-led nonprofit Pearl At The Mailbox, and author of her newly released memoir. We met Sheri at the Night of Hope 7, the largest child and human trafficking awareness and prevention collaboration in the state of Arizona that included law enforcement, government representatives, and nonprofit organizations. Both of our nonprofits were honored to be invited to be part of this event. Plus, Jessica from Fire mentioned your incredible story to us. So welcome to the show, Sheri.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you all in person as well.
Yes, it was so nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Such important work. So this is Karen. I know I officially met you then, but just saying hi again.
Continuing with part 2.
Yeah, so you'd mentioned on a podcast that a pastor bought you when you were being trafficked, and that's shocking to even think about. But did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, a pastor, doctors, lawyers, teachers, every profession you can think of, they are buyers as well. Now everybody's going to be suspicious as to all the people around them. I think that's one thing that was really hard for me to, once I did come to know the Lord, is finding a church where I really felt trust.
Yeah.
I was being led properly, and I found my place. God opened that door, and I am so grateful for that. But it's weird going to Washington because there's still 2 people on Capitol Hill that bought me when I was being trafficked, and I know who they are. I don't have any interaction with them.
Wow.
They wouldn't even know who I am now. I mean, I'm much older and I look completely different, but they're everywhere. They are everywhere. So when people start talking about Epstein's Island years ago, that didn't surprise me. I mean, I never met Epstein and I never went to an island, but my last trafficker flew me all across the United States. He was a high-end trafficker. We were sold for a lot of money, sometimes $10,000 a night. What's interesting is sometimes people would buy you not to have sex with you, but to be able to scream and yell at you and verbally abuse you. Things that I think they would want to do with people in their private life, but they knew they couldn't get away from it. And that sometimes is even worse than the sexual act, because the sexual act is quick, it's over with. But being screamed and yelled at for hours is quite traumatic.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
Sorry so, I had to endure that.
I believe the world we live in.
Well, we live in a fallen world, right?
Yes.
Very much. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of sick people running rampant, but I've got the power of God behind me, right next to me, in front of me, inside me, and I just keep moving.
We do. Yeah. We do. Now, we already kind of talk about this, that you lived with your parents for 3 years while you were being trafficked and they didn't even know what was happening. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of the girls are groomed while they're living in the home and even trafficked while they're living at home. So you explained that the church needs to wake up. Did you want to expound on this?
They just need to pay more attention. They need to be open to having these discussions. They need to be open to having someone like myself or some other survivor come in and share from a survivor's point of view what this really looks like. And they're just reluctant to do that. The church has just got to step up in many ways. And I don't know. I don't have answers for what they need to do. I mean, that's in God's hand, and God deals with the leaderships of the church. I just share what I think needs to be done, but this also needs to happen in the home. You know, our parents need to have these conversations with their kids. You teach a kid how to drive, so you go over the driver's manual. You teach them how to park the car, put the car in drive, brake, turn corners, all of that stuff. Why aren't we teaching our kids how to spot if somebody is trying to mentally groom them? Because the mental aspect happens well before the sexual side pops in. So why are our kids not being taught certain phrases that people online are going to say to them if they're really trying to groom them? Who in the world really has even 100 friends? Who? Nobody. So why online do you have 100 friends? Let's say you don't know who they are, but oh, they're a friend of a friend. So since they're Sally's friend, that must be a good guy. Well, you don't know that. Sally could have just added that person. And then if they're uncomfortable and they feel that the individual is starting to ask inappropriate questions, how to shut that down. Girls especially, you know, at those young ages, we're pleasers. And we want so badly to be accepted and have a boyfriend. And a lot of times they're very crafty at what they say to these young girls to get them to fall into the trap. Oh, well, you know, like, baby, I love you. You're the one for me. I know when you get older, we're going to run away together and I'm going to take you to Tahiti and you're going to have everything you want. You're never going to work for anything. And you just send me a picture of you topless so I can think about you and think about all the time we're going to have together. That's what they hear.
It's very manipulative. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a young person's like, wow. Okay. All I got to do is show you this picture and I'm going to go to Tahiti someday. Wow. Okay. No problem. And then that just starts the reeling in. Years ago, I was invited to go into a room. They called it a catfishing room. So it was a room where they had computers set up all over the walls, lots of monitors, tons of keyboards. I want to say like 20 keyboards. And the people, they were fishing on multiple platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those, to find kids that were posting phrases that presented them as vulnerable. And then they'd start trying to have conversations with those kids. And it was fascinating that this is somebody's job. That's what they do. That's their job. They're like the recruiter to go out there and find something. The interaction with how I was groomed, I think now looking back, was a lot of work for my first trafficker because he used his son as the recruiter to get me to come to these parties where now, oh my gosh, somebody can be trying to groom 10 kids at the same time.
Wow, this is just fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm blown away.
Yeah,
blown
such a
away
dark web of
podcast.
all of this.
And you want to talk about the dark web. Yeah. So I have been on the dark web, not on my computer, on a police computer, because you don't want that stuff in your home and you have to use a different router to get to the dark web. But somebody did some research for me because I was curious about the videos that were recorded. So when I was assaulted at 15, every rape was being recorded, and that's what kept me submissive. And they have sites on the dark web called vintage porn. And I believe my videos are out there still from the 1980s and 90s. And the dark web is they have these giant pedophile rings. So you have to become a member to be a part of the pedophile ring. And the only way you can stay a member is to provide new content every month, which means nude pictures of minors. And so it's dark. It's dark.
It's just really hard for the police to track them. Is that what it is?
It is. Because with the dark web, you know how with a normal computer, you have an IP address that goes right to where we're connecting. So like somebody could look at what we're doing and see us connected together. On the dark web, the router system they have to use can be like people allow their computers to be used as routers. So it could go from here to like New York to Tokyo to London to Cincinnati, where they really want to be. So it's extremely difficult to find out where the source of the issue began. It's
Yeah, so
fascinating.
they have to be really sophisticated then.
Yeah, very much
That's
so.
pretty crazy.
I know. It is crazy. I have a presentation that I do. It's about an hour long, and it goes through all of the grooming aspect. And then we go into sharing a little bit about how it happened to me. And then we go into what trafficking really is. And then it goes into, we have a section where we actually have a convicted pedophile who shares what he looked for when he tried to have interaction with young boys and the people he would look for to make that happen, meaning like a single mom or a dad that's never home. And then it goes into the dark web where we talk about what happens in the dark web. And so that when a child thinks innocently they're just sending a topless picture because they think they're going to go to Tahiti, that image is being sold all over the place. And then what happens now with one of the federal bills that we're working on, it's called the Take It Down Act. And this is because AI is coming in full force in our world, that now they do deep fakes. So you could have a body of, let's say, a porn star and attach a 16-year-old's face to that, and it's blasted through the school and online, and it just destroys a person's life. And what the Take It Down Act will do is when a tech company or a platform is notified of an image, such as in that case, that they have 48 hours to take it down or they face penalties. And the tech companies, of course, are fighting it, but it's gotten some good headway so that when I go to Washington, D.C., I sit there and I talk about, well, we know this is what can happen to this child, and we can't do that. That's not fair to ruin that child's life like that. And so I stand up for all the kids.
Yeah. Because you're being the voice of all of them. I
want to be. That's where, that's what I want. I want to save a life because that's where God's put me in this arena now. And sometimes I tell you guys, I feel like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. I know what's so funny now is, and I'm having to pray about this and deal about this. I don't know why it's bothering me right now, but there's more survivors that are starting to speak up, and I am so grateful for that. But one thing I have noticed that our world still focuses on the outward, and that a survivor who is pretty will get heard more than a survivor who's just average looking. And I'm like, wow. So that trafficking mentality is still working in the survivor community. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, it shouldn't be that way at all.
No,
it shouldn't be that way.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
So the memoir, we had mentioned that you wrote your memoir. Did you want to tell us the title of that book and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Pearl at the Mailbox, named in honor of Pearl. And it just shows how I was groomed over 3 months. This was definitely orchestrated by God because I wrote it in 4 days and it just flowed. And I'm like, okay, so it's not graphic, but it shows how emotionally I was being played with to force me into situations that, one, in the beginning, I just didn't even realize the danger that I was walking into because of the innocence of childhood. And then once the pressure to attend these parties was put stronger on me. And then the difficulty I had with this boy who in the book I named Carl, I thought truly was my boyfriend, but he was actually being used by his father to get me to come to these parties. And then how it went from these parties to actually being sexually assaulted the first time. And then I just go in and I share what happened after that. And then just my 7 years of being trafficked and how Pearl rescued me. And then just some of the struggles that I went through post-rescue, just trying to figure out life in general, and then getting married because I thought that was the thing to do, but still dealing with a lot of trauma and not understanding what trauma does to a person. or their body or their behaviors, and then having kids, because I thought that was the thing to do and that was going to make me feel better, without dealing with the trauma. Because I did seek out mental health, but apparently the ones that encountered me, I think it was just too young in its infancy to deal with trauma. And they were more fascinated with trying to hypnotize me to get more information out of me. And there was no way in the world I was going to be that vulnerable to let somebody hypnotize me. Yeah, it was hard. And my kids are grown now, and it's still a struggle because their childhood, they were never abused, but I wasn't a good mom, and I own up to that. I wasn't a good mom because I was a mess to begin with. So I thought, okay, well, I need to go to school. So I went to school, I became a nurse. I hated that. Even though I worked in labor and delivery, which is supposed to be beautiful, I didn't like it. And then as I got further into my life and I was in my mid-30s, I'm like, okay, there was some stirring of, okay, I need to start dealing with this stuff. I'm understanding what happened. Now there's an actual name for what happened, and I'm understanding more. And then I started to get mad, and I said, well, how can I take control of this? So that's when I became a flight attendant. And I did that for a couple of reasons: to master the hotel room, to be able to go in and out the door of that hotel room when I wanted, and also to see if I could possibly find any other people that were in the same situation that I was in, being flown on airplanes all across the country and nobody knowing.
Did you ever have that experience where you saw that?
Well, I had some questionable experiences where I wasn't quite sure. People seem to think that the majority of kids that are trafficked are going to jump up and say, hey, I'm being trafficked, rescue me. They're not. They're very much expected to behave a certain way. So I saw some odd things, and there were times that we did ask that the police meet the aircraft, but I never knew what happened. So I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I mean, I did see odd things, but that's what I did that. And then I retired because my airline kept going through mergers and I lost seniority. So I was like, okay, well, now what do I do?
We're both there. She's an airline employee.
Yeah, I work for American.
I retired from Southwest.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so I was with America West.
Oh, okay. I was with America West too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I was there for 12 years. I was a flight attendant for about a year, but then I was a flight attendant and they filed Chapter 11. And so I lost my flight attendant job, had to go back to a job prior within the company.
Oh, yeah. Well, I kept my seniority, even though we merged with US Air, got bumped down a little bit, but I still held a line. And then when we merged with American, forget it. I would have been back on reserve after 13 years. And I'm like, no way, not happening.
Yeah.
So I walked away from that. And
you were there for that long though?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I actually enjoyed that job. I am one that I like change because that keeps my brain thinking all the time. And I'm always having to be aware of where I'm at. And situational awareness is something that's really, it's just part of me. And then I just retired, and my husband and I, we have a couple companies, worked with him for a while, and then God was really pushing. This was pre-COVID. So I started my first nonprofit called You Can't Groom Me, not really sure what God wanted me to do with it. And then it fizzled because COVID hit, and then I got colon cancer. And so we stopped. And then I thought, okay, well, that's it. We're done. And I focused at that time more on the apps and the online games and stuff that were just really coming out, and everybody was on them. And then I went, surprising, 2 years ago, God's like, guess what? I'm like, no, I don't want to, but I did. So now we're just going full force, and God's going to open doors, and I'm going to go through them.
Yeah, you're definitely making an impact.
Yes, you are.
So we already talked about you talked a lot about the Supreme Court stuff. Now, right when we were at Night of Hope, Karen and I saw you and you were about to testify. Did you already talk about that earlier, or was that different?
I was the Congressional Judiciary hearing.
Okay.
But for the United States Congress, that's what I did on February 27th. And that's where we talked about these members just throw out questions, sometimes have nothing to pertain to what it was, which was human trafficking, and what's a bill called the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, which is to get in law somebody who's been trafficked but charged with a federal crime to be able to get that expunged or removed. And so they were throwing all kinds of different questions out there that had nothing to do with the topic, but that's just politics in general. I've noticed just even local here in Arizona. But I was invited because I got the vacator law updated last session here in Arizona, which is the same thing as the federal bill, except it applies to local charges. So prostitution, petty theft, things like that. So that was actually signed by the governor and was effective as of last October. So we got that updated for the survivors here. And so now the Senate roundtable is what I've been invited to and look very much to going to. And I always just pray that, well, God will give me the words to say what I need to say. And so if anybody listening out there feels led to help me get there, I appreciate that. If not, please just pray for Pearl at the Mailbox and that we always be submissive to what God wants us to do and the direction he's pointing us in, because this is very interesting. Some days I'm like, wow, God, you got a lot of things going. And then other days I'll be like, it's really quiet. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's like that for me too. I'm like, okay, there's the Lord. And then,
Okay.
I think because you can't be in that chaos all the time, though. I have to get some breaks from it. But I became really concerned when I was contacted by a friend of mine that needed assistance because there's young girls between age 12, 17 right down the street being trafficked. So just please be praying for that mentorship program to come into fruition.
Yes.
And the police can stop the traffickers because the law enforcement are already involved in it. Since the collaboration of Night of Hope, can you give us any success stories?
Well, I think every day is a success. Every day that we wake up and we can continue this mission of protecting kids and individuals from being groomed and trafficked is a success. I don't really keep track of wins. I'm just I'll be available for whatever because it's not my glory, it's God's. I'm just going to go do what I'm supposed to do. And I am really excited to see what God does with the Grooming Prevention Hotline. And
that's a success story right there. I guess what I meant by the question was they started Night of Hope 7 years ago. Have there been any big rings taken down or any, because of the awareness, the increase in the awareness? I guess I could have rephrased that question.
Okay, sorry. No,
I read it and then I'm like, I don't know what I was.
I pay attention to some of that stuff, and I have tremendous respect for the police and the heat units that have to go out there and try and get the buyers and the traffickers. And they make a lot of arrests. But unfortunately, what happens, the way our judicial system is, many of these charges become misdemeanors. They can't really get them on trying to buy sex with a minor, for example, because they don't. Maybe there wasn't actually an exchange of money or something else. And so they get fled down to misdemeanors. So there's a big gap from the success that the police do to when it goes before a judge. That's when things kind of fall apart, which is sad.
That's what makes this so hard then.
Yeah, it's just so much darkness. So at the Night of Hope, you spoke on stage, and I've got to say, I really liked the skit that they did because I'm a visual learner and I get really moved by visual things. And I liked how they did that skit. There was no words in it, but it really got the point across. And so that was kind of based on your story.
It was. They approached me a couple months ago. I spoke at Rock Point Church, is one of the churches. So Rock Point Church and Bethel Church, they work together on Night of Hope. And I spoke, I believe it was at Rock Point Church. They have this program called Rescue America. And I somehow got connected with them because last year was the first year I ever attended a Night of Hope. And apparently they try to feature a survivor every year. And they have this artistic arts department, which I've never heard of in a church. But anyway, the woman had read my book and she's like, wow, this could be a powerful way to explain what it's like to be trafficked. And she shared with me what she was thinking. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it didn't sound good to me. I said, can I come and see what you're doing? And so I was able to go and watch what they were doing and get all my tears out before that night. And they did such a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke at Rock Point once, and I actually go to Bethel now. So yeah, we're familiar with both churches.
Yes. They did a really good job. I was really, really honored to be asked, and I just hope that it impacted somebody's life in some way.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, impacted us.
Yeah. So we thought it would be good to go over the questions that they asked you on the stage because they were important questions. So the first one was, how many times were you trafficked before Pearl intervened?
Close to 6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, significant.
What should people do when they suspect a possible trafficking situation?
Well, if it's grooming versus trafficking, if it's grooming, you can now call us, but also get the child away from the device that they might be getting groomed on, or block them from being able to see a certain person. If it's already trafficking and you suspect it, get somebody in authority to investigate. I've been told by police many times, they said, we would rather you call us and be wrong than not do something at all. So you can do that. You can call the non-emergency line in your community and say, can you go check this out? If you're at a mall, like, I don't know, Desert Ridge or some mall, and you see something that's odd, go find the security department and ask them to go check it out. You're a little concerned. Again, it's better to be wrong. You don't even have to stay around. You can just say, hey, this situation looks weird. Can you go check it out? And we're working now on educating private security companies on how to look for a potential trafficked minor that might actually be out in the public with their trafficker.
Yeah, when we were at the Night of Hope before Karen came back to the table, these girls were telling us that this person was being trafficked at the mall. It was a kid. And they called the police and they didn't respond for an hour or two, and the people were already gone. And then someone said, you should have called the National Trafficking Hotline. And they said, well, we just called the police. We thought, that would work, but it didn't. And they got away. So that's interesting.
Yeah, in that case, I would go find mall security.
Okay. So you guys are training people all over to just be more aware.
We're just
to know what to do.
Right, because I can tell them exactly how I was told to behave and my mannerisms when I was out in public with people. And people often think, well, okay, somebody that's being trafficked out in the public, they're going to be wearing a mini skirt or a crop top. That's half of the teenagers right now. But no, I always dressed very professional. When I was flown across the United States, I looked like a young professional businesswoman. You would never have guessed. Never.
Yeah, I think we were at a mall, so that's good. That's good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Go find the mall security, because yes, police can't really do anything unless there's active harm happening, like the guy's choking her or beating her up.
I think that's what they were told.
Yeah, and again, with the human trafficking hotline, they feed into local community organizations here. So sometimes calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline isn't the best. Not saying don't do it, but if you can find a local number, like Dream City Church has a direct line, it might even be better to call them. But really, it's the security company. When you're at a mall, they've got security, go find them.
Yeah, because they're there already. Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, and how can each of us be a Pearl, like the Pearl of your story?
Pay attention to what's going on around you. That's so simple. Pearl paid attention to what was going on in her world. She noticed the activity at the apartment that I was held at. You're not needing to be the one to go do the rescue. I mean, that's what Pearl did, and she gave me a way out. But again, it goes back to, if you're in the mall and you see something odd, that's being a Pearl, going and finding somebody who can take over. You don't have to do that. It's better than, gosh, you come home and you turn on the news and you see this picture of this kid that's gone missing, and you're like, wow, that was the kid that I saw at the mall. Maybe
better to say something always.
Yeah, just say something. But that goes back to where it just seems like people don't want to be involved with anything anymore. Yeah. We've lost the desire to watch out for one another, which I don't know. I mean, I think most people are good people. I do. But I also think that it's scary to get involved in something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed
intimidated.
Because you don't want it.
There's not a lot of us that are even willing to be involved. It's too bad. So you gave us the phone number for the grooming that you just answer, that you take the calls for. Is there a number? Can you give our listeners a number to call if they suspect human trafficking?
Well, with human trafficking, there's a number of them. Of course, you've got the Human Trafficking Hotline. There's an Arizona Human Trafficking Tip Line, which is 877-429-8477. And then there is the Where Hope Lives 24/7 hotline that's connected with the Dream Center, and that's 602-516-0033. And then the Rescue America hotline for people who are needing to get out right away. It's 713-322-8000.
Okay, not someone that's being trafficked that's trying to get out.
Yeah, the Rescue America one is that if somebody is trying to get out.
I probably needed that this week, but
Mhm.
a lot more trafficking. And we work with other nonprofits with domestic violence calls, and that they've had a lot more trafficking calls this year too. The women want to get out. They need help getting out.
And that's the problem. There's just not enough resources. We were looking at creating a Pearl home for minors that were getting rescued out of trafficking. And the amount of money, not just to start it, to maintain it, is just not something that we can do right now. So God closed that door because I still need to stay on prevention, not post-rescue. But hopefully someday that door will open. And there are not enough places for these poor people that need to get out,
Right.
Men and women, boys and girls. It just breaks my heart. There's nowhere for them to go and nobody will take them. And then if they're addicted, that's even harder because they can't find places to go.
Well, we work with so many nonprofits in Arizona, and everyone has such a wonderful, caring heart.
Yeah.
Our nonprofit provides education, hope, and healing from all forms of abuse.
That's
We
good
pray
to-
more people would become aware of the work that the boots on the ground nonprofits do, many including Hanging On to Hope, who represented at Night of Hope 7.
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for just everything you're doing. I mean, you may think you're not doing a lot, but I hear what you're doing and I'm thinking, wow, to be able to testify and do what you're doing, even within the politics, this gives me awe. So I just thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on the podcast. We love what you're doing and that you're trying to bring about education, awareness, and prevention to human trafficking. So where can our listeners find you, like your website?
Pearl at the Mailbox, all spelled out.
Okay.
Not the @ symbol. So Pearl at the Mailbox.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Is there anything else you wanted to let our listeners know before we go?
Well, thank you for the invitation. And I thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. And it's going to take the community to stop this. So we need more people in the fight.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah,
Don't
definitely.
be afraid. Step up.
Yeah, that's what your message is, loud and clear. That needs to be heard for sure.
Yeah, the first step is the education, and podcasts are big now. So hopefully we can get some people to get educated.
I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing one on bullying next week. And I mean, that's education too. I mean,
That's terrible. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So I guess it's a wrap.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
We just want to, this is yours. Sorry. Anyway, it's Karen's turn.
Yeah, no, we're just picking it up. We
Gotta
just
have
want to
fun.
thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.